Hi, today I'll be coding these two gradient icons using a single element for each. The technique will be building up on the one used last week, and if you haven't seen that video, you can go watch it. It will be linked in the description and probably on this video as well. But I will be coding everything from scratch today, so let's get started with that. As you can probably see, we have two divs, one for each icon, and we have the gradients right there. And now let's start writing some CSS. So we'll be setting display grid on the icons, and then we'll have their before and after pseudo elements. And here we'll be setting content because nothing else will be displayed otherwise, and we won't be seeing anything if we don't set a background. But let's say we'll have a linear gradient, and this is going to be, let's say, the orange one. Let's just take it from there. Like that. But of course we won't be seeing anything if we don't set some dimensions. So first off, we're going to set an inner diameter, and let me just show you what I mean by inner diameter. I mean the diameter of this disk in the middle. Then we'll be setting a padding, and that will be the gap, and then a border, and the border will be that donut. So let's get back here, and the padding will be much smaller, let's say something like 1/10, and the border is going to be slightly smaller than the inner diameter, so let's say something like 5 ems. Okay, now having done this, we'll be setting the width to that inner diameter, the height to the same value, and now we're seeing something. Let's also set border radius 50% so that they're round. Let's also set some sort of a margin so that we separate them. Okay, let's set that padding, and let's set the border. It's going to be solid, transparent. Okay, now the thing is, we also want this gradient to be at an angle, and something else we want is for that background size to cover everything. So by default, the background size is taken to be equal to the padding box, because outside the padding box, stuff gets covered by the border if you have a solid border. But if you don't have a solid border, you can expand this to cover the entire border box. So we're going to set border box there. Okay, something is a bit off. So yeah, the gradient is the other way here. So it's going from, let's just close this tab because I'll keep going to it. That's just stupid. So I can either change this to -135 degrees, or I can take this color from here and move it at the end. It's the exact same result, either approach. Now something else I want is the before and after to overlap, to be one on top of the other, and we do that by placing them in the same grid area. So we'll be having grid area, first row, first column for both. Okay, now the next thing we want to do here is create that donut effect. So we'll be doing that with a mask. So before we get to the mask part, we'll be setting a custom property here, which let's say we call fill linear gradient. It can be conic, it can be radial, it doesn't matter. It's the exact same thing because it's just red everywhere, and this means an alpha of 1 everywhere. Because with CSS masks, this is all we care about, the alpha of the layer. The RGB channels don't matter. All we care about is the alpha, because CSS masks are alpha masks. The alpha of the result is going to be the alpha of the mask layer at that same point. So here we'll be setting mask, and we'll be using that custom property fill, and first off is going to be restricted to the padding box, but then we'll add a second layer, and this one is going to cover the entire border box. So let's switch to border there. Okay, this doesn't mask anything because we have two layers with an alpha of 1, one on top of the other. But if we kind of XOR them so that they exclude each other, where they both have an alpha of 1, the padding has an alpha of 0 outside the padding box because it doesn't really exist outside the padding box. So outside it doesn't overlap the border box layer. So if we just do that, so mask composite, I actually wrote an article on this and it's going to be linked in the description. So we use exclude, which doesn't have an autocomplete. And this gives us the donut. Yay. Now, having done this, something bothers me, so let's do something about the layout. Align item center, justify content center. Let's also say flex wrap. Wrap. Make the height, full viewport height. This creates a scroll bar, so let's get rid of that, margin 0. And I think we can just collapse the body after this, because, yep, everything works nicely. Now, we'll be taking these 3 declarations, the ones related to the background and the mask, and modify them on the after. So, first off, we'll be using the blue gradient. So just take the blue gradient and replace there. Right, and then let's say we'll be having another mask layer. Let's say this one is going to be conic-gradient, and let's say it's going to go red up to 65%, and then transparent. And of course, this is also going to be border box. And we use intersect. So the compositing operation between the conic gradient and the result of compositing the first 2 layers, the one restricted to the border box and one restricted to the padding box, is going to be, so we're going to have intersection between this conic gradient layer and the result of compositing the first 2 layers. Okay, so having done this, you can see that we have the layer from underneath, the before, visible there. So yeah, this is kind of it. Something else we can do is add another layer like this one right here, and this one is going to use content box, and this one is going to add on everything. Okay, but we need to have another purple layer there on top, so we're going to take this gradient and add another one there, which of course is going to be restricted to the content box, and let's change the colors to the purple gradient. So we'll be using that up here. Okay, now let's position this correctly. So we're going to have a start angle, let's say it's going to be minus 140 degrees. So the start, the 0 degrees for a conic gradient is 12 o'clock. So let's say minus 140 is going to be somewhere there, which is pretty much where that starts. And it goes around for something like, I don't know, let's say 225 degrees. So the arc that right there is going to be 225 degrees. So when we have here, we're going to have from the start angle, and then red is going to go up to that arc. So yeah, what's wrong? Oh yeah, that's what's wrong. Okay. So yeah, it's starting to look like something, but we need to add those roundings there, and we do that with radial gradients positioned right in the middle of that sharp edge where we have the transition. So that's going to be at half the border from the outer edge. So we're just going to compute that. So the radius of that disk is going to be half the border. So the radius is going to be half the border. And to compute the position, we're going to need the trigonometric functions, which is why we import compass. So import compass. Okay, and now that I've done this, we're going to add 2 more radial gradients. And actually, we're going to compute their positions here, and we'll be using a function to do that. So function disk, I don't know what else to call it, and the position of a point is defined by the radius and the angle. Now in this case, whatever, the radius part is kind of debatable, but so yeah, we're going to have the angle and the radius, and we're going to set this equal to that radius, and we're going to have return. So calc, first off 50%, because we want to position ourselves, the origin, at 50% of the pseudo element, which is going to be right there in the middle. And then we're going to have the radius that defines the position of the center of this disk, and this is going to be 50% minus this radius r, and this is going to be a calc, so we need to interpolate. So actually, yeah, and here we interpolate cosine of that angle, and then we're going to have a y, which is going to be very similar, except we have sine there. Okay, now having done this, we'll be using the first position, so this one, and you'd think it's disk of the start angle, but it's not really, because when we compute the position of a point, the start for the angle is at 3 o'clock. When we take into account the conic gradient, the start is at 12 o'clock. So we need to actually go back by 90 degrees. So basically our angle is going to be, so the first angle is going to be the start angle minus 90 degrees, or we can add 270 degrees. It's exactly the same thing, because everything with angles is cyclic. Okay, so having done this, we're going to have second one, and of course we need to change the indices here, but we need to compute this angle first. So this is going to be the start angle plus that arc minus 90 degrees, which can also be plus 270 degrees. As I said, same thing. Okay, so now that we've done this, let's go here, and we're going to have a radial gradient, and circle at the first position, and here we're going to have a list. So we're going to set a list, and this is going to be basically red up to the radius, and then transparent. Let's interpolate this because we need this for custom properties. I actually wrote an article about how SAS and custom properties interact and what problems can arise, and it's going to be linked in the description. So that's why the interpolation and other stuff. So here we have the list, and as you can see, it doesn't like something, and this is taken to be as the compass radial gradient, so and that one doesn't work with custom properties. So yeah, so here we need to add another compositing operation, which is also going to be add, and we can safely add another one because we're going to have another gradient. So this one is going to be like this. Okay, Something we can do to improve here, we can have the radius, r plus 1 pixel, so that we have smooth edges there and we don't have jagged edges. Okay, now having done this, it kind of looks like the result, but not quite there. So first off, let's apply a grayscale filter on the second item, which is not really going to work, but I'll just show you first. So filter, it's not really going to work as intended. Or maybe it does. Oh my, things have changed. Bugs have disappeared. That's interesting. Okay. I'm impressed, I must say. Browsers have evolved. So now that I've done this, I can just collapse the after. Actually, no. I'll be taking this list, copy it there, and I'll be showing you in a moment. Here we actually have like a bit of shadow, as you can see. So we'll be adding that, and we'll be adding it on the before, because on the after everything beyond that edge limit is cut out. So we'll be adding it on the before, and we'll be adding it as a radial gradient. So be setting a list, and again this is going to go up to the radius, but here we'll be having something like RGBA, black, I don't know, something. Okay, and then it's going to go up to transparent, and let's say this is going to be twice the radius, which is basically the border. So let's use that, and let's also interpolate this part because this is SAS. So what we'll be doing here is we'll have a radial gradient, circle at the same center, first center, and then we'll be using the list from above. Okay, and of course this doesn't work for the same reason, because it's taken as the compass. Okay, and we need to set this to border box. Okay, so we have that sort of shadow there. Once, actually we can set background origin to border box, so we don't have to set it everywhere here, right? Okay, and now add a very similar gradient. The only thing that's different is the position of the center of that circle, and we're going to have something like that. Okay, so yeah, I don't know, perhaps this is it's a bit too dark. I don't know, maybe something like 0.2. It's works a bit better. I don't even know. 0.25 perhaps. I'm kind of struggling with it, but I'll leave it at this. Now, having done this, I think we can just collapse that and just move to those grid lines. So we're going to be setting a line width, let's say 2 pixels, an offset which is going to be basically half this line width, and a color which is going to be, let's say, RGBA white 0.2. Okay, so that's going to be the color of those grid lines, and here we'll be setting a padding that's equal to the offset, and a box shadow that's inset, 0 offsets, 0 blur, and then we're going to have the line width and the color, and that's basically going to be the outside frame. Okay, you can see it there. Now next we'll be having a background, and actually here we're going to go back here and take this list, which is going to be different in this case, but whatever. We'll be using something very similar here. So we'll be having the color up to the line width, and then it's going to be transparent 0. Okay, so here we'll be having linear gradient, that list, and it's going to be a horizontal line, and again we have the exact same problem. It's taken as the compass linear gradient function and it doesn't work. Now you can see the line, it's there at the top, but we want it to move it further down, so there's not going to be any offset horizontally, but vertically we need to move it down by a border width, so like this. And it's in the back, it's behind those pseudo elements, so we need to set z index -1, and this fixes it. Okay, we do have a problem. So the problem is that you can't distinguish the line here. So we will be setting the before and after, and we'll be setting the filter on them. And now you can see the line there. Okay, but we want this line to repeat, and it's going to repeat here at the bottom edge of the inner disk. So that's going to be over a padding and an inner diameter down. So horizontally, the background size doesn't matter. We just set it to 1%. It just repeats horizontally, it doesn't matter. And next, we're going to have the padding plus the diameter. And of course, we need to interpolate that, because otherwise SAS is going to try to perform the division and it's going to see different units and it's not going to work. So yeah, that's the problem right there. Now we're going to have a second linear gradient, and this is going to be plus a padding, so it's going to be at that top edge right there, so plus padding right there. Okay, so having done this, we're going to have two more gradients. These are going to be vertical, so they're going to be basically at 90 degrees, and this means we change the positioning. So this is going to be the horizontal positioning, and then we're not going to care about the vertical background size, so we're just going to let it be the default, which is 100%, because it doesn't matter what it is. Okay, so we need to interpolate that as well in this situation, and we get our final result. So yeah, this is it for today. This is what I wanted to show you. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you like the work that I'm putting out for the most part of a decade now, please consider supporting it. You can do so by being a cool cat and becoming a patron on Patreon. The link is going to be in the description, or you can get me something off my Amazon wishlist. Again, the links are going to be in the description, as well as links to resources for this. Or you can at least share this to show the world what can be done with CSS these days, because honestly, I think it's pretty damn cool. In any event, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye!